The galaxy believed the execution would end everything. They believed silence would follow. They believed fear would keep the stars obedient. They were wrong. Because that same day, humanity arrived, and the future caught fire. For over 10,000 stellar cycles, the stellar concord ruled known space. Not with kindness. Not with justice. But with certainty. The Concord was a council of 7 ancient civilizations who believed they had reached the final form of intelligence. To them, history was finished. Progress was complete. The universe had already chosen its masters. Their worlds were old beyond memory. Their fleets were relics layered upon relics. Their laws were absolute. Species that obeyed survived. Species that resisted vanished. Most never even learned why. At the center of Concord space floated the obsidian spire, a structure so massive it bent light around itself. Entire stars powered its inner chambers. It was there, inside a hall carved from black crystal and living metal, that judgment was passed. Kerrick's Vale stood alone at the center of the chamber. He was not a warrior. He was not a king. He was a human envoy. Humanity had been discovered only 6 standard cycles earlier, a minor curiosity at the edge of mapped space. A noisy species. Fast learners. Emotionally unstable. Technologically reckless. Dangerous in theory. Insignificant in scale. At least, that's what the Concord believed. Kerrix had volunteered to speak for Earth knowing he might not return. He was tall, thin, with tired eyes that had seen too many briefings and too many warnings. He wore no armor, only a dark diplomatic uniform marked with a simple blue circle, Earth symbol. 7 figures loomed above him. One was a being of living crystal, light refracting endlessly through its body. One was a massive bioorganism suspended in fluid, its thoughts projected by machines. One was pure artificial intelligence, speaking through a shifting metal shell. Others were stranger still, ancient, vast, unreadable. The human species violated Concord law, the Crystal Arbiter declared. Its voice echoed inside Kerrix's bones. Unauthorized faster-than-light development. Unauthorized expansion. Unauthorized contact. Kerrix lifted his head. We didn't know your laws existed. That is irrelevant, replied the machine delegate instantly. The bioorganism pulsed. Ignorance does not excuse contamination. Kerrix swallowed. Humanity seeks coexistence. Trade. Knowledge. We are not conquerors. A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. All species believe that, said one of the elders. Until they are. The verdict had already been written. Kerrix could feel it. This was not a trial. It was a formality. Humanity is to be classified as a controlled species, the Crystal Arbiter continued. Your expansion will cease. Your technology will be seized. Your worlds will be monitored. Resistance will be punished. Kerrix clenched his fists. And if we refuse? The chamber fell silent. The elder spoke again. Then an example will be made. A platform rose from the floor beside Kerrix. On it stood another human, restrained, unconscious. A woman. Young. A scientist captured during an earlier encounter. This individual was selected, the Arbiter said calmly. Her execution will mark your compliance. Kerrix's breath caught. You said this was diplomacy, he said. His voice shook despite his effort. This is murder. Murder is a primitive concept, replied the machine. Order is not. Kerrix looked up at them, ancient beings who had never known fear. Never known desperation. Never known what it meant to fight extinction with bare hands. You don't understand humans, he said quietly. The bioorganism's tone hardened. We understand extinction very well. The Crystal Arbiter raised one glowing hand. Carry out the final order. Light flashed. The platform went dark. The chamber registered the execution as complete. For a moment, nothing happened. Then alarms began screaming across Concord space. A junior observer burst into the chamber, its voice distorted with panic. Multiple unknown signatures detected. Dozens, no, hundreds, emerging simultaneously. The machine delegate processed instantly. Impossible. No species could bypass our detection grid. Another voice cut in. They are not bypassing it. They are overwhelming it. Stars across the outer sectors flared with unnatural light. Space itself folded, twisted, tore open, not smoothly like Concorde technology, but violently, imperfectly, aggressively. Human ships poured through. They were not elegant. They were not ancient. They were brutally functional. Angular hulls scarred by testing. Engines burning far hotter than safety margins allowed. Weapon systems layered with redundancy upon redundancy. Fleets built not for domination, but survival. At their center emerged a massive vessel, larger than anything humanity should have been capable of building. Its name burned across Concorde sensors. UNS Resolute. A transmission blasted across every known frequency. This is Admiral Lena Cross of the United Nations Defense Fleet. Her voice was calm, controlled, furious. You executed a human under a false banner of law. A pause. You have 1 minute to explain why this should not be considered an act of war. The Concorde chamber erupted. That fleet should not exist, shouted one delegate. Our projections never accounted for this, cried another. The elder said nothing. It was watching the data, recalculating, and failing. The crystal arbiter addressed the transmission. Humanity is in violation. No, Admiral Cross interrupted. Humanity was warned. She leaned forward, eyes locked on the camera. You believed killing one of us would make us obey. Behind her, hundreds of human ships aligned into precise formation. Chaotic, adaptive, terrifyingly alive. You were wrong. Across the galaxy, ancient civilizations felt something they had not felt in 10,000 cycles. Uncertainty. Fear. And for the first time since the Concorde was formed, the universe no longer belonged to them. The Concorde did not panic often. Panic was for young species. Panic was for creatures who still believed the future could surprise them. But as the human fleet spread across their outer sectors like a storm front, the Concorde's perfect calm began to crack. Inside the obsidian spire, Kerrick's Vale remained standing where the execution platform had gone dark. The smell in the air wasn't smoke. It was sterile heat, energy burned so clean it felt insulting. He stared at the empty restraints where the scientist had been, and a quiet, cold anger settled into his chest. Above him, the 7 rulers argued like gods who had just discovered gravity could hurt. They cannot have built this, hissed one delegate, its voice sharpening into disbelief. They are deceiving you, said the machine delegate. It is a fabrication. It is not, the elder whispered, almost to itself. Kerrix looked up. You just taught humanity something. The crystal arbiter turned its facete gaze down. You will not speak. Kerrix didn't shout. He didn't plead. He simply said the truth. You showed us that you only understand force. Outside the spire, across the cold void, Admiral Lena Cross waited in her command chair aboard the UNS Resolute. She watched a live feed of Concorde defense lines activating. Old technology, strong technology, but predictable. She had studied the Concorde for years through intercepted signals, stolen data, and the hard math of survival. Humanity had not become powerful in 6 cycles by being lucky. They became powerful because fear turned into focus. A voice came from her tactical officer. Admiral, the Concorde is mobilizing. Multiple defense arrays online. Their border fleet is assembling in Sector 12. Cross didn't move. Of course it is. Her second-in-command, Commander Arman Soyid, leaned closer. They still think this is negotiation posture. They're ancient, Cross said. They confuse age with wisdom. Arman hesitated. The envoy is still inside the spire. Cross's jaw tightened. I know. That was the problem. Humanity had arrived with a fleet, but they had not arrived to burn everything. Not yet. The Concorde had killed 1 human in front of Kerrix on purpose. The Concorde wanted a symbol. A lesson. Cross would give them a lesson back. But it would be human. She opened a channel, not to the Concorde, but to her own fleet. All ships, she said, voice steady, execute pattern lattice. Do not fire unless fired upon. We are not here to massacre. We are here to prove something. The response was immediate. Human ships began moving like a living organism, separating into groups, weaving through orbital lanes, slipping into positions no rigid fleet doctrine would allow. To Concorde sensors, it looked like disorder. To humans, it was a net. A Concorde message finally came through, cold, formal, dripping with certainty. Human fleet, the Crystal Arbiter announced, you have violated sovereign space. Withdraw immediately or be erased. Cross's eyes stayed on the tactical display. Do you deny executing a human prisoner inside the obsidian spire? Silence. Then, she was lawfully terminated. Cross let a breath out through her nose. Then you understand what lawful means. She nodded once at her officer. Send it. A second transmission launched, an image packet, proof encoded in a way even Concorde translators couldn't distort. The video showed the prisoner unconscious. Restraints locked. No trial. No charges. No consent. Then the light. Then her body going still. It wasn't propaganda. It was truth. Across a dozen systems, neutral species monitoring Concorde space received the same packet. Merchants, minor alliances, independent worlds. For centuries they had feared the Concorde. For centuries they had whispered that the Council was cruel but untouchable. Now they saw the Concorde kill a defenseless captive to make a point. And then they saw humanity arrive. Cross spoke again, louder, like someone reading a verdict. You have 1 hour to release our envoy and surrender the officials responsible for the execution. If you comply, no further action will be taken. If you refuse. She paused just long enough to pull every ear closer. We will begin dismantling your control systems. Not your people. Not your cities. Your chains. The Concorde border fleet arrived within minutes, sleek ancient warships, each one a black blade wrapped in glowing shields. They formed an arc in the darkness, weapons powering up in perfect symmetry. A junior Concorde commander hailed Cross directly. His voice tried to sound confident, but it carried strain. Human Admiral, you are surrounded. Stand down. Cross replied softly. Do you know why your council has ruled so long? The commander didn't answer. Because everyone believed you were unstoppable, she continued. Not because you were right. The commander snapped. We are ending this. His fleet fired first. It was a beautiful strike, concentrated energy spears aimed at the resolute center mass, designed to punch through shields and crack the spine. It was the kind of attack that had ended rebellions in a single volley for thousands of cycles. But the spears never hit. Space shimmered. And then the human fleet wasn't where it had been. To Concorde sensors it looked like teleportation. To humans, it was something less magical and far more dangerous. A trick using hundreds of microjumps, timed within fractions of a second, distributed across dozens of ships so no single energy spike could be tracked. Humanity had learned to move like a swarm without becoming one. The first Concorde volley passed through empty space. Then the humans struck, not with a kill shot, but with something the Concorde had not prepared for. Human ships released hundreds of small objects that looked like debris. The Concorde commander sneered. Kinetic junk. Then his shield indicators began failing. Not collapsing, failing. The debris wasn't metal. It was engineered dust. Nanostructures tuned to resonate with Concorde shield harmonics, clogging the field like sand in an engine. The Concorde had spent millennia perfecting a single shield frequency. Humans had spent 6 cycles learning how to break patterns. Shields destabilizing, the Concorde commander shouted, panic punching through his discipline. Cross's voice came over the channel like ice. We studied you. You never changed. Arman leaned in. Admiral, we have an opening. Cross stared at the display. The Concorde fleet was powerful, but now it was confused. Confusion was weakness. And humans were experts at exploiting weakness. Do not destroy them, she ordered. Cripple their command ship. Human warships fired next, short bursts, precise, surgical. They targeted engines, sensor arrays, communication spines. A Concorde cruiser tried to rotate away and lost thrust. Another went blind and drifted. A third attempted a counterattack and found its weapons locked out by a human signal jammer that didn't overpower, it imitated. It lied to their systems, fed false confirmations, tricked them into thinking they had fired when they hadn't. The Concorde commander screamed orders that no longer mattered. Then a small human corvette, barely the size of a Concorde escort, slipped under the command ship's shield gap like a needle and launched a magnetic clamp onto its hull. A boarding pod followed. Cross watched the feed without blinking. Team Echo is in, Arman reported. Inside the Concorde command ship, human marines moved fast and quiet. They weren't there to slaughter. They were there to prove a second point. Humans could walk into an ancient warship and take it apart from the inside. Within 8 minutes, the Concorde commander's channel opened again. His voice was shaking now. Human Admiral, cease. We will negotiate. Cross leaned forward. Where is our envoy? A pause. Then, weaker, he is alive. Good, Cross said. Then listen carefully. She softened her voice, not because she felt mercy, but because she wanted them to hear every word. You executed one of ours to teach obedience. Now you will release one of ours to learn restraint. You will also broadcast, publicly, that you fired first. The Concorde commander hesitated. Cross's eyes hardened. Or I will begin taking your fleet apart ship by ship, and I will do it without killing you. Which means everyone will live to remember. The commander swallowed his pride on an open channel. We fired first. Across the sector, neutral listeners heard it. Recorded it. Shared it. For the first time in 10,000 cycles, the Concorde bled reputation. Inside the obsidian spire, Kerrick's veil felt the floor vibrate as distant systems shifted. The council's arguing slowed. Their certainty was dying. The crystal arbiter stared forward as if it could intimidate the universe into going back to normal. Kerrick's lifted his chin. You wanted to make an example, he said quietly. The elder finally spoke, voice thin and ancient. What are humans? Kerrick's didn't smile. He didn't boast. He just answered like a man stating weather. We're the species that survives. And out in the dark, Admiral Cross watched Concorde ships drift, wounded but alive, while her fleet tightened its net around the obsidian spire. Because the rescue was next. And humanity did not leave their people behind. The Concorde had always believed their greatest strength was control. Control of space lanes. Control of technology. Control of fear. They never imagined that control itself could become a weakness. Inside the obsidian spire, emergency fields sealed corridors that had not been locked in thousands of cycles. Light dimmed. Gravity fluctuated. The spire was not designed for crisis. It was designed for permanence. Now it was reacting like an ancient beast startled awake. Kerrick's veil was escorted through a narrow corridor by 2 Concorde sentinels. Their weapons were raised, but their posture had changed. They no longer walked like masters. They walked like guards unsure of who they were guarding. One of them spoke, voice tight. Remain compliant. Kerrick said nothing. He didn't need to. Every vibration in the floor told him the same thing. Humanity was close. Deep in space, Admiral Lena Cross studied the rotating hologram of the spire. It was beautiful in a cold, terrifying way, layers upon layers of defensive systems, redundant power cores, shielded halls designed to survive supernova-level events. Arman Soyid exhaled slowly. That place was built to never be breached. Cross nodded. Which means it was built by people who never expected someone to try. She turned to the operations pit. Begin Phase 2. Across the fleet, human ships adjusted formation. The Concorde still had enough firepower to obliterate them if they focused it properly, but the Concorde was fractured. Their fleets were scattered. Their command chains disrupted. And worse, their assumptions were failing. The rescue plan was not heroic. It was not elegant. It was very human. Instead of attacking the spire directly, the human fleet began targeting everything around it. Relay nodes, data beacons, sensor anchors. One by one, they went dark, not destroyed, but silenced. The Concorde tried to reroute. Human cyber teams were already there. They didn't overpower Concorde systems. They studied them, mimicked them, slipped inside the logic and quietly rewrote priorities. Emergency power rerouted to non-essential halls. Defensive drones reassigned to false threats. Automated systems convinced they were functioning normally while slowly starving. Inside the spire, the council chamber flickered. The crystal arbiter stood rigid as data streams collapsed around it. This is unacceptable. The machine delegate responded with static-laced urgency. They are not attacking. They are isolating. The bioorganism pulsed faster. Predatory behavior. The elder closed its eyes. No. This is patience. A warning chime echoed through the chamber. Security breach detected. Kerix felt it before he heard it, a subtle shift in air pressure, a hum beneath the silence. Then the lights went out. Not darkness. Emergency glow. Red. Soft. Controlled. The sentinels froze. A voice filled the corridor, not Concorde. Not translated. Human. Envoy Vale, this is Lieutenant Rhea Calder. United Nations Marine Corps. We're coming to get you. Kerix closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, the sentinels were already turning. Too late. The corridor wall folded inward, not exploded, but peeled back with surgical precision. Human marines flowed through the opening like water through a crack. Dark armor, magnetic boots, weapons set to non-lethal pulse. The sentinels fired once. Their shots missed. Humans didn't fight like Concorde forces. They didn't hold formation. They didn't stand their ground. They moved unpredictably, sliding, climbing, using walls, ceilings, angles the spire had never been designed to defend. In 12 seconds, both sentinels were down. Rhea Calder reached Kerix, visor lifting to reveal sharp eyes and a controlled smile. Sir, you're heavier than you look. Kerix almost laughed. Almost. Let's go, she said. They moved fast. Inside the council chamber, alarms escalated. They are inside the spire, the machine delegate said. Impossible. They are not respecting our architecture, snarled the crystal arbiter. They never do, the elder murmured. Admiral Cross watched live feeds from helmet cams as the rescue team advanced. The spire fought back, automated defenses, shifting gravity wells, energy barriers, but every response was rigid. Predictable. Humanity had built their military doctrine on one brutal truth. Nothing ever goes according to plan. That made them adaptable. A Concorde defense drone dropped from the ceiling, weapons charging. Rhea didn't fire. She threw a small device that latched onto the drone and began vibrating at a specific frequency. The drone's own power core destabilized and shut down to prevent overload. Human engineers had figured out how Concorde safety systems worked, and how to turn them against themselves. Fleet, this is Cross, she said calmly. Prepare contingency. Arman frowned. Already? Yes, Cross replied. Because this part always goes wrong. She was right. Inside the chamber, the crystal arbiter made a decision that would be remembered for centuries. Initiate protocol finality. The elder snapped its eyes open. You cannot. Now, the arbiter commanded. The spire's core began rerouting energy. Across the structure, ancient systems awakened, ones that had not been activated since the Concorde's founding. The spire was preparing to fold itself out of real space. With everyone inside. Cross saw the spike instantly. They're trying to jump the spire. Arman swore. With the envoy and our marines on board. They'll sacrifice the spire to kill them, Cross said. Old gods hate losing. She straightened. Execute contingency. Human ships surged forward. Not to stop the jump. To ride it. The Concorde never imagined anyone would try that. Human engineers flooded the Spire's fold engines with correction data, not to stabilize, but to distort. The jump field formed imperfectly, tearing reality unevenly. Inside the corridor, Rhea felt the floor twist. "Admiral, we're losing gravity." "Hold on," Cross replied. "Literally." The Spire folded. For one impossible moment, it existed in two places at once. Then it snapped back into real space, damaged, flickering, alive. But no longer alone. The UNS Resolute emerged beside it, close enough that its hull lights reflected off the Spire's fractured surface. Docking clamps fired. Human ships latched onto the ancient structure like parasites that refused to be shaken off. The Concorde's greatest symbol of power had been grabbed. And it could not escape. Inside the council chamber, silence fell. The crystal arbiter stared at the data. "They followed us." The elder's voice was barely audible. "No species has ever done that." Kerrix and the Marines reached an extraction point as human docking corridors cut through the Spire's hull. Rhea shoved him forward. "Welcome back to friendly gravity." Kerrix stepped into the corridor, heart pounding, and felt something he hadn't expected. Relief. Behind him, Concorde systems screamed. Ahead of him, humans waited. As the last Marine crossed over, Admiral Cross watched the chamber feed, 7 ancient rulers trapped in a structure they no longer controlled. She didn't smile. "Signal all channels," she said. "Broadcast this." Her face appeared across Concorde space. "You tried to make an example of us," she said calmly. "Now you're the example." And across the galaxy, ancient powers finally understood. Humanity wasn't here to replace them. Humanity was here to change how power worked. The image of the Obsidian Spire, damaged, captured, and surrounded by human warships, spread across known space faster than any weapon ever could. For thousands of cycles, the Concorde had ruled not because it was loved, but because it was feared. Fear was efficient. Fear was quiet. Now fear was loud. On worlds that had lived under Concorde oversight for generations, citizens gathered around public displays. Merchants paused mid-transaction. Dock workers stopped loading cargo. Scientists replayed the footage again and again, struggling to understand how a young species had done the impossible. The Concorde had been touched. And it had survived. That alone shattered the myth. Inside the Obsidian Spire, the council chamber was no longer a place of certainty. Emergency fields flickered across cracked crystal walls. Power rerouted through systems never meant to carry it. The 7 rulers stood trapped inside their own monument, prisoners of their own decision. The crystal arbiter broke the silence. This situation must be contained. The machine delegate processed at extreme speed. Containment probability, collapsing. The bioorganism pulsed violently. "We should exterminate them now. Every human world. Total purge." The elder raised one thin limb. "And confirm everything they claim about us." Silence followed. Outside, Admiral Lena Cross watched long-range sensors light up, not with threats, but with movement. Fleets that had once kept their distance from Concorde space were repositioning. Independent powers. Neutral alliances. Species that had survived by staying invisible. They were watching. Waiting. Armand Soyid leaned closer. "We're getting hails. Multiple sources." Cross nodded. "Put them in queue." The first signal resolved into a tall, feathered figure surrounded by flowing symbols of light. "We are the Aurelian Combine," the envoy said carefully. "We have lived under Concorde protection for 4,000 cycles. We wish to speak." Another channel opened before Cross could reply. A mechanical voice, precise and wary. "The Kepri Syndicate acknowledges human capability. We request non-hostile data exchange." A third signal followed, this one hesitant, almost fearful. "We are not warriors," said the voice. "But we have been taxed into starvation. If the Concorde falls, what replaces it?" Cross exhaled slowly. This was the moment humanity had prepared for and feared all at once. They hadn't just broken chains. They had exposed a vacuum. Cross activated a wideband broadcast. Her image filled countless screens across the galaxy. "This is Admiral Lena Cross of Earth," she said. "We are not here to rule you. We are not here to take what the Concorde took." She paused. "We are here because they crossed a line. And because someone had to be brave enough to say no first." Inside the spire, the Council watched her speech in silence. "She is positioning herself as a protector," hissed the Crystal Arbiter. "No," the Elder replied. "She is positioning her species as an alternative." The Concorde had never allowed alternatives. That was their mistake. Cross continued. "Humanity will not replace the Concorde. We will not demand obedience. But we will not allow executions disguised as law. We will not allow extinction to be called order." She looked directly into the camera. "The galaxy deserves choice." The reaction was immediate. Across dozens of systems, long-suppressed communications lit up. Trade guilds severed exclusive contracts. Minor defense fleets began withdrawing from Concorde patrol schedules. Data that had once been buried began surfacing. Records of forced labor, erased cultures, vanished worlds. The Concorde's unity fractured under the weight of its own history. Inside the chamber, the bioorganism raged. "We must strike Earth now." The machine delegate paused, calculations faltering. Probability of success declining. "Humanity has allies now." The Crystal Arbiter turned to the Elder. "You allowed this." The Elder's voice was tired. "We allowed this when we forgot fear is not loyalty." A new alert echoed through the chamber. "Unknown fleet detected." Every head turned. Sensors struggled to lock on as space itself distorted. Far cleaner, far more controlled than human fold jumps. Arman's eyes widened. "Admiral, this signature doesn't match anyone." Cross stared at the display. "I was hoping they'd stay hidden longer." The fleet emerged, sleek, silver, impossibly precise. Ships that did not radiate aggression but authority. At their center was a vessel older than most stars. A message arrived instantly. "We are the veiled continuum," the voice said. "Calm. Ancient. We have observed this cycle of dominance since before the Concorde existed." Cross met the gaze of the projection. "And now you choose to speak." "Yes," the voice replied. "Because humanity has done what no empire has accomplished." The Concorde chamber went still. "You disrupted inevitability," the continuum continued. "The Concorde believed the future was finished. You proved it was not." The Crystal Arbiter bristled. "You hid while we maintained order." "You maintained stagnation," the continuum replied. "We hid because power always reveals itself eventually. And now it has." Cross crossed her arms. "So what do you want?" "To see what comes next," the voice answered. "And to ensure the galaxy does not burn." The Elder finally bowed its head. "It already is." The continuum addressed both sides. The Concorde's authority is broken. Humanity's influence is rising. War now would annihilate millions. Cross didn't look away. "Then help us stop it." A pause. "We will," the continuum said. "But not as rulers. As witnesses." Inside the spire, alarms shifted tone. The machine delegate spoke quietly. External compliance falling below recovery threshold. The bioorganism slumped, its rage finally meeting reality. The Crystal Arbiter clenched its radiant form. "What are you, humans?" Cross answered before anyone else could. "We're the ones who show up," she said. "And we don't look away." Across the galaxy, worlds chose sides, not always loudly, not always publicly, but in trade routes redirected, in patrols withdrawn, in data shared with human channels instead of Concorde vaults. The Concorde still had fleets, still had weapons, but it no longer had silence. And silence had always been its greatest weapon. As the spire drifted, bound by human clamps and watched by countless eyes, the future shifted. Not toward peace. Not toward war. but toward something far more dangerous to old empires. Change. The Concorde had ruled the galaxy for so long that most species believed it was eternal. Like gravity. Like stars. Like death. But eternity is fragile when it is built on fear. The final hours began without a great battle. They began with a decision. Inside the obsidian spire, emergency power hummed unevenly. Ancient systems strained under unfamiliar stress. The council stood together now, not unified, but cornered. Outside, human ships maintained position, weapons charged but silent. The veiled Continuum fleet hovered at a careful distance, watching history turn. The Crystal Arbiter broke first. "This has gone far enough," it declared. "We will negotiate." The words felt strange in the chamber. Negotiation had always flowed in one direction. Admiral Lena Cross appeared on the central projection. Her face was calm, but exhaustion lined her eyes. Humanity had moved faster in 6 cycles than most civilizations did in 6,000. There was a cost to that. "You already tried to end this with an execution," she said. "That door is closed." The machine delegate adjusted its form. "Then state your demands." Cross shook her head slowly. "That's the thing. We're not here to replace you." The bioorganism pulsed weakly. "Then you will destroy us." "No," Cross replied. "You're doing that yourselves." She gestured, and data streams filled the chamber, system after system withdrawing support, fleets refusing orders, trade routes collapsing. The Concorde's empire wasn't falling because of human weapons. It was falling because the galaxy no longer believed in it. The Elder spoke softly. "What do humans want?" Cross didn't answer immediately. She looked past the projections, past the spire, out into the stars. She thought of Earth. Of crowded cities. Of divided nations that had learned, too late, the cost of disunity. Of mistakes humanity had survived only because it adapted. "We want what every young species wants," she said. "A future that isn't decided by someone else." Kerrick's veil stepped into frame beside her, alive, unbroken. His presence alone carried weight. "You executed one of us to teach obedience," he said. "Instead, you taught us clarity." The Crystal Arbiter's light dimmed. "You could annihilate us." "Yes," Cross admitted. "And that's why we won't." Silence followed. The veiled Continuum's voice entered the chamber again. "The Concorde must answer for its crimes. But extinction will only create another myth. Another shadow." Cross nodded. "We don't need a myth. We need a system." Her terms were simple. Terrifyingly so. The Concorde would dissolve itself. Its fleets would be disarmed under Continuum oversight. Its archives would be opened to the galaxy. Worlds held by force would choose their own path. The Concorde races would retain their home systems, but never again absolute authority. The bioorganism recoiled. "You strip us of everything." "No," Kerrick said. "You keep your lives. Something you denied others." The machine delegate calculated silently. For the first time in its existence, there was no optimal solution. Only survival. One by one, the council agreed, not because they were convinced, but because the alternative was irrelevance followed by collapse. The Crystal Arbiter was last. Its light flickered, fractured, then stabilized into something dimmer. "We accept," it said. Across the galaxy, the announcement spread like wildfire. The Concorde was over. There was no cheer at first. No celebration. Too many worlds had suffered. Too many scars remained. But slowly, something unfamiliar began to take root. Hope. Months passed. Humanity did not crown itself ruler. That surprised everyone. Instead, they helped build something messy and imperfect, a galactic assembly where power was shared, argued over, limited. Humans argued loudly. They disagreed constantly. But they listened. And they remembered. The veiled Continuum faded back into the shadows, satisfied. On Earth, people watched the stars with new eyes. Not as conquerors. Not as victims. but as participants. Admiral Cross stood on a quiet observation deck months later, watching ships from dozens of species pass peacefully through human-controlled space. Armin joined her. History's calling this the day the galaxy burned. Cross smiled faintly. They always remember the fire. What do you want them to remember? He asked. She thought of the executed scientist. Of Kerrix standing alone. Of a species that refused to kneel. That when the galaxy tried to break us, she said, we didn't become monsters. Below them, a human-built station lit its beacons, open, welcoming, unfinished. Humanity hadn't conquered the stars. They had challenged them. And the stars, for the first time, answered back. Not with fear, but with possibility.